Welcome back to Rich Scale Model Fix and the continuing build video of the Kinetic F-104J Starfighter. So in the previous episode you'll have seen us do some work on the machine, get the paint done and build up some of the smaller detail parts. And in this section of the video we're going to be looking at adding the markings. So this is my favourite section of building. It's when the project comes to life. It's that mental image that you have of the model completed starts becoming reality on the bench in front of you. But just before we start, I just want to speak a little bit about decals and what they are. So decals are water slide transfers. They're printed onto a backing paper and then they're covered in a varnish to make sure that they don't lift off when they're submerged in water. By submerging them in water, it releases the adhesive a little bit, and that allows you to slide the marking off the paper and onto the model surface. Once the adhesive dries again, it glues it in place. So certain products on the market that we can use to help us in that quest to get the painted on look from decals, which is the overall objective. And I've just got a few here on the workbench of the common popular ones and some of the stuff that I use. So one that modelers will probably be familiar with, Microset and Sol. I've only got the Sol. Most manufacturers do their own, so we've got Tamiya Mark Fit, and then we've got the ones from Mr. Hobby, to work in the same way as Set and Sol. Some of them are various colours, and Daco do red, amber and green, and these are various strengths. As the green one, I've got an amber one somewhere, and I tend to use these most of the time, but it's always worth checking before we do use any of these products that they don't destroy the decals. So I shall be using the Mark Fit to begin with, and then we'll see how it goes, and we'll perhaps use the Daco red on top of those. Water, decals work better in slightly warm water. It means that they're less likely to crack as it softens the surface up. So I have a coffee cup warmer, sort of a ceramic bowl with some clean tap water in. I use a brush that's never been used for anything else other than decals, because we don't want any pigment from paint or anything getting caught on the markings. A pair of tweezers and a knife. So a couple of pairs of tweezers, and we'll just grab a scalpel. So for this model we're going to be using the national insignia and the markings for the rescue warning triangles and stuff, I think, from the kit. So the kit markings are printed by Cartograph, so they're up there with the quality of any aftermarket product. They look to be really well printed, but obviously for the aircraft that we're going to be depicting, or are depicting, those markings aren't available on that sheet. So we'll be using the 2 Bobs ones. So the reds do differ slightly, and I think with what we used for the red on the aircraft surface, I'm going to favour the Kinetic items over the darker 2 Bobs ones. However, the 2 Bob ones have got all the stencil data printed on, and likewise for the Kinetic ones. Overall, I just think the Kinetic ones are better produced than the 2 Bob ones. Perhaps there's a little bit more detail in some of the warning diagrams, so we'll just do for the sake of the review, we'll use the kit markings as well as the 2 Bob ones for the unique aircraft that we're depicting. So let's get on with it. So we're ready to make a start, and I usually work on one section of the airframe at any one time. So we're going to work on the nose to start with. So turning to the 2 Bobs sheet, all we actually need for this the aircraft serial number of 673. So what we'll do is we'll go to the Kinetic ones and we'll use those first. There we go. I've got the Kinetic stencil data placement guide, and I think we'll go with number 1 first. So we're just checking that they are the same, and they do have the white background to the national insignia. So we'll just cut the marking from the sheet. Making sure that we've got none of the black numbering, as it tends to end up getting trapped underneath. And then we're going to submerge the decal in the water. And we're just going to leave that for a few seconds. And we're looking now just at the marking guide to see where it goes. So we're looking for telltale location aids. So if we look, there's a bulge in the cannon door there, and it sits just on top of that. And that's going to be our location, I think. So just make sure the surface is clean. Get the marking off, and as you can see, it's just coming off the backing sheet there. So we'll just give it time for the adhesive to loosen off. And we're just going to put a bit of water on the model surface, and this is just going to help us locate the marking into position. You're probably not going to be able to see too clearly, but we'll slide it on. And so we said it sits just proud of that, just on top of that thing, and not quite at the intersection of that. And then we're just going to double check with the instructions. So it's a little bit, it's not quite, markings might actually be too big. So we've got the panel line running down there, and it doesn't come as far as that, but it's not as far as that, and it touches, the white outline touches that. So we'll say that that's probably too big for the kit, unless I've got the wrong marking. No, definitely number 1. So using a cotton bud, we're just going to roll the water out from underneath. There we go. So I'm just going to check the size of these markings from the 2 bob sheet. Compare them to the kit sheet. And they look to be the same size. Interesting. So it doesn't marry up with the marking diagram. So we're just going to let that bed down for a second and let the sort of adhesive out, and then we're just going to start gently just pushing it down to the model surface. We'll just start seeing some of the panel details start coming through. And we're ready for the next one. So we're now going to put the stencil, the warning triangle for the intake, which is number 31. Then we just remove this from the sheet. That's sort of going to go on there. So we'll just check that it's looking right. Yep. So again, submerge that in the water. And while we're doing that, we're going to look at number 36 as well from the Kinetic sheet. So that will be our next marking to put on. The marking's free of the backing paper. I'm just going to wet the area around there. And gently marking in place. Like so. And then we'll put the it looks like the fuel filler cap on there. Markings, so we'll just have a look at the orientation of that, and it looks like the text goes to the bottom, which it does. Again, just waiting for that. I like to keep the workbench clean while we're putting decals on. So the marking's ready. Bit of water, and then we'll slide it into place. So taking care here to make sure that the centre section lines up properly with the marking for the access panel, and that it's straight. There we go. Just some of the water out the way. It has moved. A quick check to make sure it's low. Do this. So the next items we're going to put on are the rescue arrow and triangle, and this is all one decal, I think. So we've got 14, 18 on the canopy sill, which we've not done yet, and 32. There's 32. When in the water, it's all one piece, which makes aligning everything really easy. And then we want the ejector warning seat. The ejector seat warning triangle is 14, which is that. So that'll be our next marking to apply. make sure that all these markings are going where they should. Yep. Just lining everything up there with the door section. We'll just get a bit of that water out from underneath because it doesn't want to really settle. And then we want the ejector seat triangle. So when you're working with quality decals, it really is just straightforward case of just putting them in place. And see it come quite quickly as well. So all we need to do now on this section of the airframe is just put the aircraft code, and we can move on. Not quite ready yet, that one. So I always try and work in a manner where you can carry on working despite your decals that you've put on. So once we've put these last two remaining markings on, we'll look at doing this port wing. There's the warning triangle going on. And we're just going to confirm that location as being level with the rescue arrow. Just going to get that straight. It is. So you probably noticed at this point I've put no setting solutions on the airframe, on the markings as yet, and that's because I want to make sure that everything's in the correct place before committing, because once you've put them setting solutions on, there's no real going back. So we're going to turn our attention to the 2POB sheet, and we want the aircraft number, which is 673. Unfortunately, these are all joined together, so yep. Could have actually used the markings off the Kinetic sheet if we'd have cut them up. However, the individual tail markings aren't present there, so we'll just slide these into the water and get these in place. And I'm just checking to make sure everything is straight and everything looks in order, which it does. And this decal's now starting to dry out, and you can actually see the panel detail coming through already. So with the addition of some setting solution, that is really going to look painted on. Marking there. So looking at the instructions again, it seems to sit the access door here and on the line of the gun bay, cannon bay access panel. So we'll just lubricate that and slide the marking into place, and then we're just going to position it so. I think it just goes a little bit further forward than that. So what we'll do is we'll bring it like that, and we're looking, making sure it's straight, and then just rolling the water out underneath as we've done all along. Just a little bit of an air bubble under there. Okay, so we're happy that everything's in its rightful place. That marking might be just a little bit high, so we're going to have to readjust this. So I've got it just a little bit high. So we're just going to float some water in it, and then we're just going to nudge it down just a set. So it should just be the bit of the three should be just sitting like so. And if we position the 6 on that vertical line, that should look straight. Which it does. And then we'll just repeat the process of getting the water out from underneath, hoping the decal doesn't move. And there we go. So at this point we can start adding some setting solution. So the first thing we're going to do is just put some of this into a dish, and therefore it doesn't weaken the solution with diluting it with water. And what we're going to do is we're just going to try a little bit before we commit to the whole of the markings, just on this access panel marking. The simple reason we've got a spare one of those on the sheet, and we're just going to see if there's a reaction. Now I'm quite confident because I've used this setting solution before on the markings provided in the Kinetic Kit and cartograph markings without any adverse reaction. So we're just going to cover the rest of the markings with some of the solution, and then we're just going to leave it. We're not going to touch it or anything. Now this is why I like using Johnson's Clear for decals, because actually the setting solution reacts with the surface of the Johnson's Clear and helps, it softens it up. So then when it dries again, it actually pulls the marking down into the surface of the model with it at the same time. So we're just letting the setting solution take its make its effect, which it is doing. Nothing too nasty appearing, and then we shall leave that there. And we'll move on to the next section of the model. Okay, so we'll put the national insignia on the wings. So again, follow the same process, and we'll just check on the progress of this, see if we can see for the camera. So as you can see here where the paintbrush is, that is now settling down quite nicely into the panel detail. And there is a bit of raised hinge there to that access panel, so I'm just going to put a little bit more locally on there and just around here. The rest are fine because they're over a flat surface. And we're ready to move on. So we're going to put these markings on the wings now. So looking at the instruction sheet, it's quite easy to line up because it's the center of the panel with that. So this one just literally resides like so. So it's going inboard a little bit more. And it's going to dissect that access panel. So we just need to move it out there. And then we're going to repeat the process of removing the water. And already you can see, probably not on camera, quality of the aftermarket decal. The panel detail is already showing through that marking, and that's without sort of burnishing it down at all. So we will have some stencil data to go over the top of this, so we'll just do the other side. And then we'll move on to the tail markings. So just keep your eye on this front fuselage section because there is a hinge there, so it might just need a little bit of coaxing over the hinge. There we go. That's looking quite nice. We'll just get the marking on the wing on the opposite side. Just make sure everything's symmetrical. It is. You get through quite a few buds. There we go. So again, we're just going to put some setting solution over the markings. I'm just going to come back to this this one. I want it to really settle round the panel detail. We're ready now to put the tail markings on. And just wipe that area down. This is where we refer now to the 2 bob sheet, and there is going to be a little bit of difference in colour between the reds. So we want this one. The difference in the red, but we'll go with that as it's the tail marking rather than the national insignia, and I'll match the red there. Again, we'll just put that off, and we want the aircraft serial number 768692, 76892 8673. So using the 2 bob sheet, we can see that that is zapped. The teddy bear's right foot is on the rudder hinge line. So it's not the rudder hinge line, it's this panel line here. So we'll just slide it into place. Just there, the back. There we go. It's just moved. So making sure it's straight, making sure it's in the right location. Just lower down. There we go. Working up. And then we'll get the aircraft serial number on. And pick it up. That's ready. Just going to wet the area on the model again. And slide the decal into sort of the right location. final adjustment. So the 7 goes upon that same panel line. And the 5 just touches that panel line coming up through the top of the thing. So we're just making sure. There's actually a row of rivets there, which is quite convenient to line it up with. And I'll just water out from under there. So it's a shame there's a difference in the colours, to be honest. Such is real life. If I wanted to be really pedantic, I could mask over the decal and just touch in with the red. But it doesn't bother me too much. So there we go. That's how to apply decals. I'm sure you really don't want me to sit here and go through the rest of that. It will be quite a lengthy process. So we're just, before we go, we'll just check that everything is bedding down and setting properly. And as we can see with these wing insignias, they are pretty good. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but the panel detail is really showing through. And we're just going to give it another application. There's no raised lumps or bumps or anything under the decal because of the gloss coat. The surface under the, we're using the micro mesh, the surface that the decal's gone on is as smooth as it gets. And therefore we've got no little lumps or bumps sticking out with dust or anything through the decal. We should have eliminated the possibility of any silvering. So that's the work that we've just done. Quite happy with it. It's starting to look the part now. We've still got to add quite a bit to the airframe. We've still got the flaps and the slats and the speed brakes and the undercarriage to add. So join me back at the bench when I've put the rest of these decals on, and we'll have a look at the end result.